Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. I'm so glad that you're with me today. And welcome to episode 102, in which Jackson learns to speak. Now, actually, we're going to be talking about something probably a lot more important. We're going to call it the 4 stages of learning today. And in this lecture that I've taken out of our vaults, out of our archives, I'm going to talk about the 4 ways in which you actually begin to learn material, regardless of whether it's for the bar exam or anything else, that comes from some of the educational pedagogy that's out there and some of the work that we use in Celebration Bar Review, to be sure. And you might say, well, why are you doing that at this stage? And the answer is that we're right now on the release date for this episode, just a little more than 2 weeks until the next bar exam. And you might have heard me talk about in the last episode, when we were talking about the demons that haunt people as they study at this stage. I talked about moving from the gathering stage of information into the consolidation stage. Well, today I want to talk about what that consolidation actually looks like in terms of actual learning. And what we want to do is break that down for you over the next couple of weeks so that you have some idea of where you need to be in terms of your actual understanding and consolidation of the material that you've been acquiring for these past few weeks or months. And I find that this is a good time to introduce this material because it simply gives you an understanding thematically of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And some of you are going to say, understanding thematically, I just want to understand the rule against perpetuities. Well, suit yourself. I think this will actually help you understand the rule against perpetuities, or at least why you don't need to learn it word for word and verbatim. But you can decide that for yourself. In any event, I think this is a lecture that you're going to find pretty helpful if you're taking the bar exam in a couple of weeks. If you're taking the bar exam later in 2017, I think that you'll find the value of this to give you kind of a good overview of what the whole learning process begins to look like and what you want to be aiming for and what your expectations should and should not be. So I hope you'll stick with us for that. Now, speaking of those of you who are looking at the exams in 2017, I want to take this opportunity to invite you, if you've not yet joined us for our free Masterclass. It's called How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. And this is a 90-minute online webinar in which we look at the 4 steps that passing bar takers employ to be successful on the test. Now, this masterclass is completely free, but you do need to register in advance. We offer it live on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's 12 noon Pacific time. And we've also got video encores available throughout the week if that time is not convenient for you. But what we'd invite you to do is to go to our website at celebrationbarreview.com, click on the button that says Claim My Spot, and register and sign up, and we'll get you the proper information. If you prefer to register using your mobile device, you can text the phrase Next Bar Exam to 33444. Again, text the phrase Next Bar Exam to the number 33444, and we'll get you registered for the upcoming masterclass and look forward to seeing you there. I think you'll find it really helpful and useful. Well, I want to jump into today's message. I know those of you that are getting ready for the July exam are on a short time frame and you want to just keep things moving right along. So let's take a look now at the 4 stages of learning. Hi, and welcome to Celebration Bar Review. We're right now about 14 days, 2 weeks until the bar exam, and I know that this is a time of great activity, certainly some stress, and I think a little bit of fear for most people. Hopefully you're beginning to transition, though, out of fear into confidence and anticipation and excitement about the exam. In my message to students today, I talked about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is the theory or the science of learning. And you might be thinking to yourself, why in the world do I want to hear about more science of learning when I'm trying to learn the rule against perpetuities or the hearsay exceptions? Well, I think if you can get a little bit of a perspective on what the process is that you've been going through and the process you will go through over the next couple of weeks, it's reassuring to most people. So I hope you'll stay with me for a couple of minutes. Now, regardless of what skill you're learning, whether it's the bar exam or learning to drive a car or play the piano or do anything that requires new abilities, new skills, we know that there are 4 stages of learning that are going to occur, and they can be broadly grouped. And I'll give you those groupings and then tell you a little bit about how I think they play out in this context. Almost everyone has to go through all 4 of those groupings. In other words, you can't just start at 0 and go to 100 all at once. So here are the stages. The first stage in any endeavor where most people start is what we call unconscious incompetence. It's just like it sounds. You're so stupid you don't even know that you're stupid. You are totally lost. And to use the example of learning to drive a car, this is the person who says, well, I can drive. It must be easy. I've played Wii or Xbox or whatever the game du jour is, and I can do it. I mean, it's easy. Anybody can drive a car. We call this unconscious incompetence, and frankly, it's where most people start. A lot of people begin their bar studies thinking, well, I went to law school, or I've practiced law, or I've taken a bar exam before, or I know people who have taken bar exams, and it can't be that difficult. Well, I'm pretty sure that most of you are now well past unconscious incompetence. The second stage of learning a new skill, however, is very uncomfortable. It's called conscious incompetence. Now, conscious incompetence is when you become profoundly aware that you don't know enough about whatever that skill is. When you realize that you're not a good driver, suddenly you're freaked out. It's your first day in driver ed, and the teacher says, go ahead and accelerate onto the highway, and you're terrified, and you're looking at the mirror and pressing the brake and checking your side mirrors and going crazy. Suddenly it's not so easy. In the bar, this really is that moment when you begin to do some testing or pre-testing, or you write your first essays or performance tests, and you begin to realize that in fact it's a harder task than you expected, and you're now suddenly confronted with what you don't know. Or you did a series of multiple choice questions for the multi-state, and you realize, wow, I really don't know this subject of the law very well. It's a very unpleasant place to be. And the people who go to the bar exam with conscious incompetence are going to fail. They know they're going to fail. There's nothing pretty about it. It's ugly. You'll see them sitting outside the room waiting to go in and take the test, and they're frantically scribbling or highlighting or reading from notes. They're conscious of their incompetence. And if that's where you are on exam day, you're in trouble. Now, some of you may be may be consciously incompetent today and aware of it, obviously, and saying to yourself, well, is it too late? And the answer is no. You can move beyond that second stage into the third stage, and it's an important stage. Stage 3 is called conscious competence, just what it sounds, conscious competence. It's the point at which, with great focus and attention, you can do competent, or we can translate that to passing work as you study for the exam. Conscious competence, when you are talking about learning to drive a car, was the day you got your driver's license. If you're like me, that day was not anything sterling in terms of your ability, but it was a pretty exciting day because you got the license. And the point was that when you focused and paid attention and did exactly what you had been taught to do, you could be a competent driver. Does that mean you were a good driver? No. Does it mean you'll be a good lawyer the day you take the bar exam and pass? Probably not. But it does mean that you're competent, and competency is passing. It doesn't mean great, but it means passing. Well, how do you get to competency? Well, you do that by being focused, by being aware, all the things that we've been talking about, and certainly in our course been teaching and preaching as you go along. But the key right now is that if you feel like you're at stage 2 of conscious incompetence, you need to simply move yourself to conscious competence. That is, being aware, taking the steps, learning to write, learning the weak areas, progressing in the things that you need to learn so that you can become consciously competent. And then on test day or test days, you have to be conscious. You can't freak out, you can't flip out, you can't lose consciousness, as it were, and zone out and say, gee, I just don't know what happened. I fell asleep for 6 hours during the day. That won't work, obviously. So conscious competence is really the minimum threshold that you need to learn a new skill and to be able to master it or apply it under those test conditions. But it's not the fourth stage or the final stage of learning a new skill. The fourth and final stage is what we call unconscious competence. Unconscious competence. Unconscious competence is essentially nothing other than habit. It's when you can do something and you don't have to think about it, it's just what you do. I mean, think about our driving example again. If you've been driving a car for any length of time, my guess is that these days you can drive the car, get on the cell phone, listen to an iPod, check the mirrors, do the nav system, maybe put on makeup, and that would apply to anybody, I guess, these days. Switch lanes, and you're on the interstate at 85 miles an hour. You probably couldn't have done that the day you got your driver's license, at least not with any degree of safety at all. And the reality is it's simply become habit. In fact, many of you who are watching today can't even remember how you got to where you are today. You just got here. You were thinking about the bar exam. It was so unconscious in the habit that you didn't think about it. Or the way you get up in the morning and you brush your teeth one way using your right hand or your left hand, or there's a certain order of things that you do. You don't think about them, you just do them. Well, in the bar exam, unconscious competence or habit is when you've learned how to write an essay and you know how to do it every single time the same way. It's when you know how to take multiple choice questions and you do them the same way. You know what principles of law to look for. It's when you understand the testing process and you know what you have to do for that 1 day, 2 day, 3 day test, whatever it might be. Is it necessary to have unconscious competence in order to pass the bar exam? And emphatically, I want to say the answer to that is no. You don't need to have a habit. Now, it's great if you can reach that. If you're already doing competent work, your goal over the next 2 weeks should be to try and get to unconscious competence. In other words, to make passing quality the habit, the thing that you always do no matter what. It's simply a better way to function. It'll be easier for you during the days of the bar exam. But most people who go to the test, candidly, will not be in stage 4 of the learning. They'll be in stage 3. And that's perfectly acceptable. Stage 3 will pass the bar exam, just like stage 3 passed your driver's license test. Later, you can get better at being a lawyer. If you stay in the bar exam industry long enough, you can get pretty good at taking bar exams. But that's not really the goal here. The goal is simply to pass in 2 weeks, and you can do that. Now, the reason that I talk about these stages of learning with 2 weeks to go is that I think you can step back, take a few minutes right now, and think about where you are. With respect to your multi-state or multiple choice test question preparation, clearly I'm not at stage 4 there, you ask yourself, where am I in this process? Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Most of you are probably between stages 2 and 3, and that's okay. Now you want to move yourself into this conscious competence level. The same thing for your essay writing or your performance test writing. Look at where you are and look at where you need to get in order to pass the exam. If you do that, I think you'll have a roadmap that can lead you very nicely through the next couple of weeks. Obviously, I'll be back a few more times as we get closer to the exam to help lay out some more of the steps in that roadmap. But keep that broad concept in mind. I think it'll help you a great deal as you study over the next couple of weeks and as you move towards a goal of conscious or unconscious competence. And that's our message for today. Thanks very much. Have a great study day. Well, that's our episode for today. Thanks so much for joining me and for being part of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. Now, if you'd like to catch up on prior episodes or check out the show notes, you can do that by going to our webpage at celebrationbarreview.com. Click on the link at the top of the page for podcasts, and there you'll find all of our previous episodes as well as the show notes. You can also subscribe to the podcast from that site, or you can go to iTunes and subscribe there. Just type in the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers, and you can subscribe and be part of the podcast series. And we would love to have you do that. While you're on the iTunes site, we would also really appreciate you giving us a quick, honest rating and review. That feedback is really useful to me as I prepare these episodes. It only takes about 30 seconds, so I hope you'll do that. Just type in the name of the podcast and give us your rating and review. Again, if you've got any questions or you'd like to know anything else about Celebration Bar Review or the courses that we offer, visit our website, or I invite you to contact us. My email is jackson@celebrationbarreview.com, and I look forward to hearing from you and to seeing you along the extra mile very shortly. See you on the pass list. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.